Hey, good evening, good evening. My name is Yeshua Armani. I am going to do my slides for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, as you can see here, this is the introduction. What I'm going to go over is a couple of slides on my part of the project. So, the key thing that I worked on was the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and how it helped in legal discrimination. I'm also going to go into the education, the housing, and lending systems that remain unequal. And then I'm going to go into detail on how that still exists today. So here's an overview of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So we're going to go over the main points. It prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. So pretty much what that means is when this law was passed, when they did a form of discrimination in the housing market, they used to use race, color, religion, sex, and national origin as a way to redline people of color. So basically, it will make it more difficult for people of color to get equal housing and equal opportunities for for housing and renting apartments and even owning a home in the United States of America. So we're going to talk about the education and discretionary practices. So pretty much, a lot of this stuff starting to happen after the Brown versus Board of Education, but they still found a way to finesse or still push these laws. And what they did was, or not laws, but push discrimination. And what they did was they did it by school zoning, academic tracking, and disciplinary policies. So school zoning, basically what they did was they had like they had schools where a lot of them was being underfunded. Like for example, if the school had predominantly African American, the housing market and the housing the how can I say it? Not the housing market, but the way that they was being funded, they was pretty much underfunded compared to the housing in predominantly white neighborhoods where they get more funding. Academic tracking, for example, what that means is they'll like look into how many people dropped out of school, how many people actually graduated school, and then they use that as an excuse to underfund or push certain policies to discriminate as well. Next thing they did was minority students often placed in lower academic tracks. So pretty much what that means is that if you was in a school that's predominantly African American or people of color, they pretty much characterized you as as a school that has like lower lower standards compared to white schools. So here's the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974. What it did was it made discrimination in lending illegal, required lenders to explain credit denials, and expand access to. So let's go over that. So made discrimination in lending illegal. So pretty much they couldn't use your background, such as your sex, color, origin, or national origin, as a way to discriminate against you. Required lenders to explain credit denials. What that means is they couldn't just say, "Oh, you're denied." They had to give you something in writing. And if you look at the Fair Credit Reporting Act now, um, when you apply for something and you get denied, they always say, "Well, we're going to notify you in 7 to 10 days," and then they give you the reason why it was denied. Sometimes it be because of credit. Sometimes it do be due to the amount of inquiries or open accounts or closed accounts or collection accounts. They have to notify you to give you the reason why, even when applying for a credit card or mortgage or loan or personal loan or anything like that. Next, we're going to talk about lending disparities still exists. So we have ongoing issues now in the African American communities. We still have a higher rate of denials due to credit, due to areas, medium income, limited access to capital. For example, like business loans, um, capital as far as like owning a business, revenue, wealth inequality, meaning that there's a wealth gap between, it's like between 100,000 for white people compared to 10,000 for African Americans. The reason why is because of the lack of credit scores. Basically, they say, they project that African Americans have one of the lowest credit scores out of all groups of people. Income history, basically saying that African Americans and other people of color don't have stable income, stable and job employment. Basically, what that means is, how long you been on the job for. Has you been here for 6 months, or have you been here for a couple of years? How stable you are, because they look at, like, if you're not stable, how are you going to pay these loans back? Property values. Basically, what that means is, if you're in a low income area, you're not paying as much property tax as those of high earners. So basically, they use that as an excuse to, hey, well, low income areas, they don't pay that much capital, so we're going to base the funding off of the medium market value, compared to if you're in a predominantly white area, the houses are more expensive, so they're going to pay more property tax that we can use to fund schools. And what they do is they use redlining, segregation, and unequal economic opportunities to push the hard line when it comes to that. Now we're going to talk about the Fair Housing Act of 1968. So the purpose of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 is for renting condos, housing, apartments, etc., selling homes when it comes to real estate, and housing opportunities. The whole goal of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was to potentially end segregationist housing practices, meaning that we're trying to make everything equal for both renters and homeowners, increase equal access to neighborhoods, meaning that instead of just putting African Americans in predominantly African American neighborhoods, African Americans do have the opportunity to live and stay in other areas as well. And then what they wanted to eliminate was, they wanted to try to eliminate it based off of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. So pretty much what they were trying to do is anybody can live anywhere, pretty much as long as you meet the qualifications. Now we're going to talk about the housing discrimination today. So today we still have discretionary practices going on in the United States by real estate agents, meaning that real estate agents and real estate companies are still trying to push a hard line on putting African Americans in predominantly lower income areas. Biased tenant screening, basically background checks they use. If you have certain felonies or misdemeanors, you don't meet the qualifications. Credit criteria, you don't meet the qualifications as well. Income qualifications, 2.5 times the rent, those type of things. Credit-based discrimination, basically if you don't have a certain credit score, you don't meet the qualifications to stay in certain houses. I've personally seen where if you don't have a 700 credit score or better, you can't rent in certain housing developments or apartment complexes. So next we're going to talk about how systems connect. So pretty much what that means is we're trying to what they're trying to do is they're trying to create these laws to make it where it's equal amongst everybody. We have, people should have, certain credit criteria. People should be on a job, but, we shouldn't just base that based on color. If a white person have bad credit, or Asian or anybody else, they should be, treated as everybody else. So the conclusion that I came up with was civil rights laws reduce explicit discrimination, meaning that the Civil Rights Act was here to treat people of all national color, background, race equally. Race neutral policies, meaning that everybody should be treated equally. Historical discrimination, wealth gaps, and structural barriers, basically meaning that, we have people that make more money than other people, but that doesn't mean that they should be discriminated against.